We want to do it in a peaceful way.
I always speak in English.
I have a dream.
In English, I feel I can read better. I speak Welsh and English.
For us to be or not to be.
It's one of those strange things that often you think you don't have a particular accent yourself, but you're told by other people that, oh yes, you've definitely got one.
Well, somebody told me yesterday that I hadn't got an accent, but everybody's got an accent. So, I guess it's sort of southern England mixed with the sort of background of my Midlands origin.
I'm originally from the East Coast, and I lived in California for 10 years, and the accent that I have, I actually kind of like, and it's interesting that it marks me out as an American.
I used to meet so many Englishmen, and they were surprised. Mr. Fernandez, you speak such good English and with the correct accent.
I didn't really know I had an accent unless I hear other people from other countries, really.
Nobody has labeled it yet. I don't know, what would you say?
The producer is waiting at his microphone to speak his last word to the artist. The controllers are ready on vision and sound. The vision and sound are on. The station goes on the air.
Hello, Radio Olympia. This is direct television from the studios at Alexander Palace. And now we're going to see and hear someone you know well.
Your BBC men all spoke, and presumably were conditioned to speak, in a sort of educated Southern English voice, which became known as the BBC accent, and was one of the innumerable ways in which the BBC strongly influenced social attitudes. Now, why was it that you wanted them all to speak like that, rather than in some rich regional way, like as you do yourself?
Do I speak very definitely Scots?
Oh, very.
What I tried to get was a style or quality of English which would not be laughed at in any part of the country.
Tara, and exhibition ಏನು ಮಾಡಲು ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದೆ ನೀನು?
Pollution model.
Pollution. ಏನು air pollution or sound pollution?
All the pollution.
All the pollution.
Clifford's craft is as traditional as his talk.
That old stuff in that?
That's old, no, Bo. Long while since that bit of wood was in the acting, Bo.
Today, Clifford is having some help from his friend Reg Sillett. They both live in the depths of Suffolk.
You got the rabbits around your old farm?
5 old rabbits I see on that front meter.
Oh, hey, you got Mixie?
No.
We need to make a difference between accent and dialect. Accent only refers to pronunciation. Dialect is something that's much broader. It's pronunciation, it's grammar, and it's vocabulary.
You're going to go right to further side. I said, well, you mean further? He said, he meant farther side, you see. The further side, he said. So he went across that old field and I got across there and I see an old bloke there. He said, where you going? I said, I'll come to the further side. He said, what you mean further side? I said, I don't know. I said, more don't know farmer, I don't think.
It's not a question of speaking bad English or good English. That's a social evaluation. The linguistic evaluation is whichever dialect you speak. It's got rules. And if you weren't dealing with perfectly regular, rule-governed systems, people wouldn't be able to understand each other.
Please pay attention and listen to the lilt of the music.
For many in India, English has become a language of fashion. ಒಂಥರ social status in a marker ಆಗಿದೆ ಅದು. It shouldn't be.
To autumn, season of mist and mellow fruitfulness. Close bosom friend of the maturing sun.
English shouldn't control our life. English should be there as a language of knowledge, as a library language, as a gateway or as a window to the knowledge outside. But we should stand on our own legs, on our soil. We should be deep-rooted in our culture.
Le franglais, c'est l'arrivée dans la langue française de termes anglais ou américains. Et l'arrivée, on peut même dire l'invasion de la langue française par tous ces termes. Des termes comme un parking, un lifting, un jogging, le verbe stresser, je stresse, le verbe flipper, il flippe. Des expressions qu'on entend partout et qui, quand on est française, ça vous donne une impression vraiment, on a l'impression d'être colonisé.
The teacher said a noun is a naming word. What is the naming word? In the sentence, he named the ship Lusitania. Named, said George. Wrong, it's ship. Oh, said George. The teacher said a verb is a doing word. What is the doing word? In the sentence, I like doing homework. Doing, said George. Wrong, it's like. Oh, said George. The teacher said an adjective is a describing word. What is the describing word? In the sentence, describing sunsets is boring. Describing, said George. Wrong, it's boring. I know it is, said George.
The story of English is unusual in that it actually has a very clear beginning. There were some boatloads of Germanic invaders settled in East Anglia about 500 AD. What they found when they arrived, of course, was that there were already languages spoken in Britain, particularly the Latin language, which had been left by the Roman invaders, who'd only just left the country, in fact, but also the Celtic languages, the original indigenous languages of the British Isles. From that period on, English has always lived in the company of other languages. Many other languages have influenced the development of English. Latin for several centuries after the Romans left, right up into the 18th century, but also French at various times, notably after the Norman invasion of the 12th century, but also in later centuries. And as English has expanded and spread around the world from the 16th and 17th centuries on, it's come into contact again with many other languages.
Yeah, I heard you there. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm sitting in Sweden.
What part of Sweden are you in?
All but a select few. Today, we're going to open some of those closed doors to give you a glimpse of what goes on at the JSC setting up the giant.
Here it is, sir, the very cornerstone of English scholarship. This book, sir, contains every word in our beloved language.
Every single one, sir?
Every single word, sir.
Oh, well, in that case, sir, I hope you will not object if I also offer the doctor my most enthusiastic contrafibularities. Contrafibularities, sir? It is a common word down our way. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I'm anaspeptic, phrasmotic, even compunctuous to have caused you such pericombobulation.
What are you all about, Blackadder? This is all beginning to sound a bit like Dago talk to me.
I'm sorry, sir. I merely wished to congratulate the doctor on not having left out a single word. Shall I fetch the tea, Your Highness?
Yes, yes. And get that damn fire up here, will you?
Certainly, sir. I shall return interphrastically.
put me hand on the button. The door up with ease. Me step in and say to the man, stop me at Cuba, please. The man make up him faces like when he set for rain. So turn round tell me if me think me dep on aeroplane. The sinting start to move. Me feel like me drink 12 glass of beer. Me never know myself, so tell the man say, come out here. Me walks in a one pretty store. Me nearly drop a groan when me see some pretty gal just walking up and down. One gal come up to me and say, what can I do for you? Hear me. This is Cuba, I presume. Me want to see Cousin Sue. The gal bust out a laugh and say, you're dizzy from the ride. You're from the country. Oh, poor thing, just step around this side. She show me down some step and say, don't ride the lift no more. Me go down about 40 step and land back in at the store.
Nobody can claim English as his or her own language. It's probably the closest to an international language we can ever have. And we third world writers have certainly abandoned the old uneasiness, the old embarrassment of using a borrowed language. We like to say that English is a born-again language for us, born again in Singapore, born again in India. And there's just this excitement, almost an exhilarating sense of creativity when we use English.
लॉर्ड इरविन से मिलने गांधी जी दिल्ली आए और डॉक्टर अंसारी के घर ठहरे.
A mother tongue is basically the language you use at your mother's knee, that you learnt from your mother. Except that these days, of course, you learn it as much from your father or from your grandfather or any caretaker. In many parts of the English-speaking world, actually, you learn your language from the extended family rather than from your immediate father and mother. And this has produced a situation where, especially in those parts of the world which are multilingual situations, you end up having perhaps 2 or 3 languages at your disposal. Often, as in, say, the Caribbean, 2 or 3 dialects of English at your disposal. And it becomes difficult after a while to know exactly which one was your first mother tongue.
It's easily controllable, and it needs to be easily controllable as well, because I don't have much time. I'm a very busy person, so I have to have everything just as I need it. Well, they should be sort of fairly modern in design, and they've got to be easily turn off and onable.
Turn on and offable, it's excellent, isn't it? What the speaker's doing here is very creative. He's really stretching the rules of English. Now, what you have in English is a core of adjectives that are formed by adding able to a verb stem. And most of us play around with that rule. We can say things like doable, that's doable, or meetable, that deadline is meetable. But what the speaker's doing here is stretching the rules of English to their absolute limit. And he's not adding the able to a verb stem, he's adding it to a preposition. And by doing that, you're creating something which attracts attention. It's very memorable.
There's a widespread belief that men and women use English very differently, and one of the classic arguments is about question tags. Question tags are a form where you make a statement and then you put a tag on the end of it which makes it into a question, like, it's a nice day today, isn't it? And it's been claimed that this form is particularly associated with women because as the less powerful or less confident sex, women are less likely to state their opinions directly and more likely to take refuge in tentativeness. But it's not really that simple because tag questions aren't always tentative. Actually, one of their main functions is to involve other people in a discussion. So if I say it's a nice day today, isn't it? It's not because I don't know whether it's a nice day. It's because I want the person that I'm talking to reply to me explicitly. This does seem to be a role women often take on in conversation, drawing other people in. But men do it too, and when they do it, they're just as likely to use the question tag strategy.
Man to look after me, me want girl that says she love me. No for them a come a man from all over, and who find them a know the bajola. Me say that hard the man we call the matchmaker. Feel job hard to find know the right partner. I'm a fit, but go a east and try go a west, and the north and the south to find which girl best. But the lies and me lie, me African face know the Dana Raja. Me want a princess, me want girl. Afi me Dana Rani, me want girl. I dress up in a sari, me want girl. Honey lagdi, me want girl, sweet like jalebi. No for them are sweet and some are ugly.
आदित्यार्भवो स्वप्ना अमर्त्या अमृतान्धसः
आदित्यार्भवो स्वप्ना अमर्त्या अमृतान्धसः
देयादिविशदो लेखा अदितिनन्दनाः
सम्पूर्णमुच्यते वर्गैर्नामलिङ्गानुशासनम् स्त्रीपुंनपुंसकं ज्ञेयं तद्विशेषविदे क्वचित्
लिङ्गं शेषार्थं त्वन्ताथादितपूर्वभाक्
निषिद्धलिङ्गं शेषार्थं त्वन्ताथादिनपूर्वभाक् निषिद्धलिङ्गं शेषार्थं त्वन्ताथादिनपूर्वभाक्.
It was January and a gay dreich day, the first day I went to the school. So my mum happed me up in my good navy blue napcoat with a red tartan hood, birled a scarf around my neck, put on my pixie and my pockies, it was that bitter, said, "Knew you'll no starve," gave me a wee kiss and a kiddo'n scalp in the bum, and sent me off across the playground to the place I'd learned to say it was January and a really dismal day, the first day I went to school. So my mum wrapped me up in my best navy blue cloth coat with the red tartan hood, twirled a scarf around my neck, pulled on my bobble hat and mittens, it was so bitterly cold, said, "Now you won't freeze to death," gave me a little kiss and a pretend slap on the bottom, and sent me off across the playground to the place I'd learned to forget to say it was January and a gay dreich day, the first day I went to the school. So my mum happed me up in my good navy blue napcoat with a red tartan hood, birled a scarf around my neck, pooed on my pixie and my pockies. It was that bitter. Oh, saying it was one thing, but when it came to writing it in black and white, the way it had to be said was as if you were posh, grown up, male, English and dead.
Foreign language learning is probably the biggest invisible export a country has, as long as that country is already in a position of world domination. Now, English is a world language precisely because of the role of the United States. And it's because people want to get in touch with that economic and cultural powerhouse that millions of people, probably 1,000 million people around the world now, are learning English as a foreign language.
We're all one family under one sky. Remember how we talked about being family together? Yeah. And brothers and sisters? We're all a family under one sky. We're family under one sky. We're all a family under one sky. We're family under one sky. And we're people. And we're animals.
We come from different races, different parts of the world. I come from Chile. And Because we came from different places, we had to have something in common, and that bond is language.
You know, there's never any question that we need to speak English. That's not an issue. And we don't deny that everybody must have a common language to speak. I think everybody who lives here also embraces the constitution of this land and are working towards the improvement of this land. But that doesn't mean that they have to give up what they originally have.
We are so careless with our own language. All these Americanisms that have crept in. The standard of English on the BBC is atrocious. They split their infinitives, they put the adverbs in the wrong place, they make up words that don't exist.
Well, by analogy with oral hygiene, which is brushing and flossing your teeth, verbal hygiene is brushing and flossing your language. So it's all that tinkering and tampering people do to tidy up what they consider to be the imperfections of language, regulating swearing or sexism or foreign words in a language, or inventing a whole new language. And I think people do this because they actually care very deeply about language and have a moral view of what it should be.
My name is Xiao Ji Chong. I live in Singapore.
My name is Jerry Mack. I'm from San Francisco, California.
My name is Rajan. I live in India, in Bangalore.
Hi, I'm Josh, and I'm from Ohio, and I only speak English.
My name is Elizabeth. I come from Germany. I speak German and very little English.
The statistics of World English are now quite well known. Some 350 million people speak English as a mother tongue, most of them in the United States, some 220 million there. Another 350 million or so speak it as a second language, that is, as an official or semi-official language in their country. And an uncertain number, probably as many again, some 700 million, speak it to a reasonable degree of fluency as a foreign language. And that means that the overall total is something like 1.4 billion, 1.4 thousand million, which is approximately a third of the world's population.
Different people tell the story of English in different ways. For some it has a happy ending. It's a story about an obscure language from a very small island off the shores of Europe, which grew from strength to strength, overcome difficulties such as the Norman invasion in the 12th century, and finally triumphed as a world language. Other people take a slightly different view. They're worried about the role that English now plays in the world. Perhaps it's more of a horror story, one in which some weed takes over the landscape throughout the world and forces out the kind of biodiversity, if you like, particularly the cultural and linguistic diversity, causing other languages to decline and be lost. Some people have calculated that over 50% of the world's languages that are currently spoken will no longer be spoken in 50 years' time.